Hi, my name is Jay Sugarman, and I want to welcome you to Museum Open House. This ongoing series features and highlights many of the outstanding museums and other cultural institutions throughout the state. The main purpose of most programs is to inform viewers about current and upcoming exhibits, various programs, resources, and other opportunities that are available for the general public. Today we're fortunate to have as our guest Dr. Nancy Netzer, Dr. Vera Kreilkamp, and Ms. Diana Larsen. Dr. Netzer serves as the director of the McMullen Museum of Art at Boston College, where she also is a professor of art history. Dr. Kreilkamp is professor at Boston College's Irish Studies program, and Ms. Larsen serves as the assistant director of the McMullen Museum. They're all here to share with us the fascinating new exhibition entitled The Arts and Crafts Movement, Making It Irish. Dr. Kreilkamp and Ms. Larsen curated the exhibition in collaboration with Virginia Tehan, Director of Cultural Projects at University College, Cork. Let's meet our guests now and find out what you and others can enjoy when you visit the McMullen Museum today. Welcome. Delighted you're all able to be here. I'm really looking forward to finding out more about the current exhibition. But before we get there, Nancy, would you please start by sharing a little bit about the museum itself, its mission, and what it has to offer both the Boston College community and beyond?
Yes, thank you, Jay. And I'm delighted to be back here. We've done this a number of times, and we congratulate you on your program. The McMullen Museum of Art is in its probably about 25th year now, and it has been located since 1993 in Devlin Hall, which is in the center of the Boston College campus. This spring, we will be moving slowly to our new address across the street at 2101 Commonwealth Avenue, which just happens to be over the Boston line, so we will be technically in Boston. And the building that we'll be in is the former residence of the Archbishop of Boston. It's a beautifully built building with a wonderful addition on it, and I encourage your viewers to drive by, and we'll see a few photos of it at the end. The McMullen will continue its mission of doing world-class exhibitions from around the world that are curated by groups of faculty at Boston College in collaboration with scholars at other institutions. And we are open 7 days a week to the public free of charge.
Wonderful. And I know one thing that I've taken advantage of and really look forward to are the guided tours on Sunday.
Yes, every Sunday at 2 o'clock, right? We have docent tours by a wonderful volunteer group of docents.
Vera, first of all, welcome. And before we get to see some of the fabulous objects like the one behind us, I think it would be helpful to set the context for the exhibition, because it was such an exciting time. I know the more I started reading about it, both historical, political, literary, social. Could you give us an overview of where these objects are relating to?
Sure. The arts and crafts movement, which is an understudied movement, and this is the first real exhibition, comprehensive exhibition of it anywhere. It occurs in Ireland, the Irish arts and crafts movement, between around 1885, 1890, and it starts petering out, I'd say, at the end of the 1920s. And that is probably the most important historical period in Irish culture and history. It's by 1921, Ireland has changed from a colony to an independent state. Northern Ireland is partitioned into another state. It's also the period of the Irish literary revival, presided over by W.B. Yeats. And one of the things that we feel very strongly about is that this visual movement is, well, essentially it's the visual side of the literary revival. There are many, many ties in personnel and in themes and in motifs even written about and portrayed on paper between the two movements. And there is an enormously important political side to this movement. When Arts and Crafts comes to Ireland, Diana and I, as we walked around archival settings in museums, we talked to private collectors again and again, saw how when the movement came to Ireland, the motifs looked back to an early Christian Ireland, the golden age of Irish visual achievement. And the reason for this was that this was contesting centuries of British denigration of Irish culture. So it was very important to these artists and artisans to look back to this golden age.
Great. Well, thank you. I know when we look at some of the objects, we can continue referencing this period and make some of those points again. Diana, first of all, welcome.
Thank you.
And as we start to see the objects and items that you've helped put together, I'd just be curious how the whole exhibition came about initially, and then how you situated things on the space that you have to work with there.
Well, it really came about, we got the offer of the collection of the Honan Chapel at the University of Cork. And the Honan Chapel is a very important chapel that has all the decorative arts represented, the arts and crafts decorative arts, including stained glass and metalwork. And they very kindly offered us to take anything that was portable for our exhibition. And this was truly an unprecedented, because these objects have never traveled outside of Ireland. And so consequently we were able to bring some splendid examples of vestments and metalwork. And we obviously could not bring the stained glass, which is one of the main features of the chapel, but we are able to project 4 of the windows on our big wall in the museum. So
wonderful.
Because these objects are so important and so beautiful, it was really important to feature them in some way. So we kind of moved away from a chronological presentation and really took the Honan Chapel material as the centerpiece on the upper floor of the museum and kind of really maximize the high space for that. But we have some very interesting things downstairs as well. So,
yeah, no, the range of the objects is amazing, and what really appealed to me, and maybe one of you can speak to this as we're talking, is the way you've incorporated digital media into the exhibition is outstanding. But really want to jump right into the meat of why we're here and look at some of the objects. So this first one,
this is actually a two-handled vessel. It is a beautifully wrought piece by the Della Robbia factory, which is in fact an English factory based in Birkenhead. And the artist also was English, Cassandra Annie Walker, who was one of their chief designers. But what's interesting about it is on the bottom it says Irish clay. And in fact the motifs themselves are very much looking back at the Irish sources, Celtic revival sources, with this interlace and these facing beasts facing each other, and really looks like an Irish motif. The colors and the luster glaze is very characteristic of the Della Robbia factory, which didn't last all that long, only until about 1906, and this piece is 1904. But
it's just exquisite craftsmanship.
It's quite large.
They had to charge high prices, and that's the contradiction about arts and crafts. It's for the people, but most people can't buy these things. So
let's move on to this item.
Well, this is probably one of the great gems in the exhibition. This is a very large altar frontal that was embroidered by a group of women in a guild called the Dun Emer Guild that was founded by Evelyn Gleason, who was trained in England, and the 2 Yates sisters. And it was an all-women's arts collective. The women have signed their names on the back, And they have used Celtic motifs as well, most specifically from the Book of Kells, which was the greatest manuscript of the Irish Golden Age. And one of the things I thought was really interesting is that they dressed up two female saints here. One is Saint Ita, and the other is Saint Bridget. And they dressed them both in these Celtic Revival costumes. And some of the designers from the Dun-Emer Guild also made these types of Celtic Revival costumes.
Fabulous. And this is quite sort of capturing you when you walk into the room. You just can't miss it because it just you gravitate towards it. Vera, what do we have here?
This I think Nancy should do too,
Yeah.
because this is her specialty.
Well, this is a really spectacular garment, and I agree. This was not made by the Dun-Emer Guild. This was made by a group of women working in Cork at William Egan and Sons. And I believe that the designer was a woman called Ethel Josephine Scally, who seems to have died in 1915 before the commission was completed. And again, I think she is looking at the interlace in the Book of Kells, as well as wonderful peacocks that are omnipresent in the Book of Kells. And she has created a garment that's uniquely her own, using inspiration from this great monument. So it's sort of a masterpiece after a masterpiece.
Yes, very well said. And still on the first floor, Diana?
This is actually one very fine example of the altar plate, as they call it, the metalwork that was made for the chapel. And it is, in fact, an incense boat, and the spoon that goes with it, which is a stoop, known as a stoop. And again, this piece was designed by William A. Scott, who was a professor at the University of Dublin, and he was an architect, very well-known architect as well. But many of the pieces of the altar plate from the Honan Chapel were designed by him, very innovative designer, and executed by the firm of William Johnson and Company. And they were replica makers looking back at the Golden Age. But this particular piece actually is quite modern. It has many aspects of the looking back at the revival motifs from the Golden Age, but it has these plain surfaces with these applied motifs, and that is really quite modern because it's not decorated all over. If you look at early Christian metalwork, it's very much very decorated all over the surfaces. So the contrast of that and the incorporation of enamel, this Triskel motif with the three colored enamels is very distinctive. Also, the arms of the University of Cork are engraved on the top of the piece, and the spoon has this very open work interlace, which is quite distinctive as well.
And here's quite different object that we have here.
Let me talk a little bit about the Honan Chapel.
Please.
In general. The collection that we have is part of the furnishings of this extraordinary building that when I heard that it was consecrated in 1916, I said, we have to play around with that date because all over Ireland this year, this centenary year, and all over the Boston College campus, there are commemorations of the major rising that led to independence. 1916 moved inexorably towards independence, even though it was a defeated rising. So one of the things we have to negotiate in this presentation is the political context and the cultural context. And one of the things that I've been throwing out when people ask me about this is we're celebrating the cultural work of 1916, but the cultural nationalism is always involved with political nationalism in Ireland.
Definitely.
So, okay.
Now, I think glad you picked up on your initial comments of that, just so people can better appreciate the overall context of where we're viewing things. Very important.
And this piece
Please.
comes to us from an American collection, actually from the Corning Museum of Glass. And it is, in fact, a very finished sketch that was presented. It was a presentation sketch for getting the commission for the Honan windows. The Honan windows were executed by two major stained glass firms in Ireland at the time. One is the Tower of Glass Studio, which was founded in 1903 by a woman named Sarah Purser. And so a number of windows are done by them. But the real revolutionary are the windows by Harry Clark.
Yes.
And this is a sketch by Harry Clark, and he is really quite an unusual and remarkable artist. And that we have a number of wonderful graphic works by him as well.
Most definitely.
And this is a sketch that was presented to John O'Connell, who was the mastermind of the Honan Chapel, as a presentation sketch to see if he could get the commission. And of course he did get the commission. The sketch is exquisite in its own right. It depicts Saint Gobnet, who is a local Cork saint. She was the patron saint of beekeepers, and you can see a number of wonderful naturalistic bees flying around her, and many stories about her. I don't know how much.
I guess we'll move on. We have one more item from the first floor in the 10 minutes we have left that we want to make our way downstairs as well. So this is also incredibly striking when you view it at first at the museum.
Diana found this. When Diana went to Ireland, she went to the Abbey Theatre, and she was standing in the lobby.
I was just standing in the lobby sipping my wine, and just my eyes were drawn to this. This is a very large mirror frame, copper mirror frame,
Yes.
hammered from the back, which is known as repoussé work. And it was, there was a little label beside it in the theater that said, by a Youghal fisherman, Youghal, Y-O-U-G-H-A-L. And in fact, Youghal was a place of where an art metalworking school was set up in the arts and crafts period. So this would have come out of that. This metalworking school was founded by the Gaelic League, and there were various teachers from England who came over to teach, fishermen possibly, postmen possibly, in their after hours to craft metalwork. But the designs are so sophisticated, incorporating so much of our interlace and motifs from the Golden Age, that it's very sophisticated. It's very likely it was designed by one of the teachers.
Nice. Well, that's definitely some enticing background to get people to go view it themselves up close. And as we make our way downstairs, we have another array of objects. Somebody comment on this one, please.
I can do this one as well. This is actually quite a large tapestry, which is done by, Nancy mentioned the Dun-Emer Guild of Women, and the artist actually was probably more well known for her stained glass and opus secto work, which is inlaid mosaic work. Her name is Ethel Rind. But it's a lovely reflective piece depicting, well, it actually has the word smointy at the bottom, which means reverie. So it just, it's a lovely figure with peacocks and owls and again.
Nearby, we have this, Vera?
Well, Nancy and now Diana have been talking about this guild, the Dun-Emer Guild, which is a really wonderful group of women with personal and professional ties to all kinds of people in the literary revival. And when Evelyn Gleason and the two sisters, I hate to just call them the Yates sisters because they had identities of their own, and we're trying to push those identities forward. Susan and Elizabeth Yates joined with Evelyn to come to Ireland. They had been living in England for years to start this all-women's arts and crafts collective, and this was their first major commission. And they were asked to make, at least 24 banners for St. Brendan's Cathedral in Galway, in Lough Ray. And Jack Yates, who is probably the most important Irish artist, and same family, I mean, they're all tied together, was asked to design many of the male saints. And this is one of the banners, and it's totally unlike any other church banner. I mean, first of all, look at the broken wheel. This is a saint who was told to return to the monastery that he had founded, and when his to return in that direction. And when his wheel would break, that's where he should retire. And his wheel broke. Think of getting a flat tire, right? That's what I always think about. I mean, this is not the subject matter of most banners. And the way it was designed with these lines around the figures just amazed people. They said there's something very modern, very different about this, and something very authentic. And I think, you know, this is, and it speaks to craft as well as art. So I think it's a great piece.
Most definitely. And as we make our way through the next ones, if you could briefly make a comment of what we see here.
Certainly, this is a pendant, comes from the Ulster Museum in Belfast, and the artist is named Phoebe Traquair, and she was actually born in Dublin and didn't leave Dublin until she was 21. She married a Scot and ended up living the rest of her life in Edinburgh. She's a well-known designer of textiles, bookbinding, and very good enamelist, and this is a pendant by her.
And nearby, people can also appreciate this craftsmanship.
That's Eva McKee. And one of the sections in our exhibition is called Crafts Becomes Art. And we were trying to signal in that section the way in which, when the arts and crafts movement was established in Ireland, it was very much an amateur movement with guilds set up by upper class and middle class women. I mean, it was very much a women's movement in the beginning. Getting local people to make better crafts, as it were. At a certain point, with exhibitions, many exhibitions, the movement was towards more professionalism. And we began, when Diana and I went through museum archives, we began to see works by named artists. They were no longer anonymous. The women at the Honan Chapel doing the textiles would have been anonymous, except that they embroidered their names on inside some of the garments. But here is a professional artist who is looking in the north, you know, who's looking very seriously at Celtic design that you see here. And it's done in poker work, which is, this is right? Burnt.
Yes, pyrography. Which
you
is
burn
using
the
a
design.
poker to burn the design into wood.
Going to move on just so we can quickly hear about these last few, because we want to make sure to also talk about the new museum as well.
Yeah.
So a word about this item, please.
Again, I'm going to give you a little context. We noticed as we moved all over Ireland that people from the north and the south, people who are Protestants and Catholics, all communities were claiming these early Golden Age images. And there was a political dimension to the works themselves. And this was a work by Mia Cranwell, right? And she was asked to make a box to put in the names on vellum of all the senators, the new Irish Senate, a group that were under threat. 37 of them had their houses burnt down in this very conflicted time. And this was to celebrate the new Senate, and this was designed in the shape of an ancient form, an old form, a relic box from the Golden Age. Diana, do you want to add something?
Well, I can say it.
I think since we only have 2 minutes
Okay,
left, I
sure.
want to make sure that
Yeah,
at least if we could just
museum.
reference these next two, and then I'd like Nancy to make a point about the new museum. So just a quick reference.
Harry Clarke's wonderful works on paper. He's known for his
For
illustrations.
Edgar Allan Poe.
Yeah.
And this
is one of our prizes.
exactly.
We found this at the National College of Art and Design, which is the school that Harry Clarke had gone to in a new location and name. And it is called The Baptism of St. Patrick. And it was done by a 23-year-old artist. about the Golden Age, St. Patrick and his acolytes, not all looking very happy. And it was an extraordinary piece, and I think he got his Honan commission not only from the drawing Diana mentioned, but also from these prize-winning works on
no, I
glass.
think with the context and just the detailed information you're able to share, I think that's given people a background and definitely motivate to visit soon. And while it's still there in the current location, but the new location, which some people may have been seeing, some of the construction over the past months, could you just say in the minute or so that we have left a quick word?
This is the building under renovation, and it's done now. So if you're passing on the T, you will see a really glorious building, which is closer to these initial renderings. And we want to say that it will increase our space, it will increase our visitor amenities, there will be better parking, it will be closer to the T, and we will be opening in September with a glorious exhibition of medieval and Renaissance manuscripts from Boston area collections. 160 will be at Boston College, 50 will be at the Gardner Museum, and 50 will be at the Houghton Library.
We have to wrap up now. I know there's so much more we could talk about. I want to thank you all for being here, encourage people to make their way over to see the exhibition, and all the best with the new opening in September. Also want to thank those of you watching for joining us, and hope you'll be able to tune in next time.